Hello friends and fellow bibliophiles, and welcome back to Kat's Novel Adventures. I participated in Week of Weird Round 4 and I want to share my adventures with you. Hey everyone, I have officially started my Week of Weird Round 4. It is Wednesday evening. I am hosting my What's Up Wednesday sprints and we are in the last sprint. So I figured I'd go ahead and let you know what I have started my Week of Weird with. And it is for the prompt of read a book by an LGBTQIA plus author, and I have chosen The Possession of Natalie Glasgow by Hailey Piper. I'm excited because this is my first Hailey Piper that I'm reading, and it's not a very long book. It's about 100 pages. And I want to share what it's about with you. Margaret Willow has never met an 11-year-old as dangerous as Natalie Glasgow. Natalie spends her days comatose, but at night she prowls her mother's home, unnaturally strong and insatiably carnivorous. With doctors baffled, Natalie's mother reaches out to Margaret, an expert in the supernatural. But even Margaret is mystified and terrified by Natalie's condition. She's dying, and before she dies, she might kill. Has a demon clawed its way inside an 11-year-old girl, or does the source of this nightmare lie with Natalie's dead father? This book is creepy from the very, very beginning. It starts off where Heather, Natalie's mom, is in her bedroom with Margaret, the supernatural expert, and they're having a conversation about Natalie, who has just started with a strange behavior weeks before. Margaret is at the house for the first time, and she's going to observe Natalie. Margaret is an expert, but she's also scared because, you don't know what you're dealing with, and demons or entities are pretty freaky and scary, but it is very creepy in my opinion. I was tense starting to read this from the very beginning, and I've made it to page 26. It reads pretty quickly. I am captivated by it, and I like Hailey Piper's writing. It's almost like reading a horror movie, like this would make a really great horror movie in my opinion. But just the descriptions of Natalie and what she has become because of whatever is inside of her is, I don't know, just very creepy to me. That's the best way I can say it. But there were moments where I actually had to pause because I'm like, I don't know if Margaret should take another step on the stairs, or what is she gonna do? Is she gonna make it back to the room after she, tests Natalie to see what's going on? But that's where I'm gonna leave you because I don't want to say anything else. I don't want to spoil anything, and I will update y'all when I have finished the book. I finished my first book for Week of Weird and I enjoyed it. I really had a good time with The Possession of Natalie Glasgow. This was a pretty good debut novella. I was engaged the entire time I was reading it. I was creeped out at times. There was a lot of tension other times, and it really was paced well. And also, I was surprised by what was actually possessing Natalie. I didn't even know that it was possible to be possessed by this possessor. And I was also pleasantly surprised by the ending. I enjoyed the ending, but I did not expect to feel the emotions I did at the very end. I will tell you though, I'm giving it 3.5 stars, but I'm going to round it up to 4 on Goodreads. And the reason I'm doing that is because I wanted more character development. And not so much for Heather and Natalie as much as for Margaret. I really was fascinated with Margaret Willow, and I wanted to know more. I wanted to know, how did she get into this business of determining what is possessing people. We know that this is not her first case. And so I want to know, how did she get into it? What is her background? Was she trained, in the Catholic Church at some point? She's mentioned as possibly being a midwife or possibly being a witch, but she has experience. And we know that she's part of some kind of a group, but we're not given enough. And I want to know more about Margaret. The other thing that I wanted to find out is the possession. I wanted to find more out about this possession. How is it even possible? And explain how it takes place and how you would even know what to do in this case. So all of those elements I felt could have been, I don't know, developed a little more. I wanted a little more backstory in it. And I'm going to tell you what it reminds me of. At first, it kind of read like a movie, but I'm thinking more, it reads more like an episode in a television anthology. Or this is actually like a chapter of many chapters in a book about Margaret's life. And this is just one of the many cases that she's been on. But otherwise, I really did enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to diving in to more of Hailey Piper's longer works as well as her short stories. So next up, I am reading a short story called The Weirdest World by R.A. Lafferty. This will be the first time I'm reading anything by this author, and that is one of the things that I enjoy about the Week of Weird, is that I'm exposed to all kinds of new authors. So this story I don't know anything about, and that makes it exciting and fun to read it. I'm hoping it's as weird as the title, but I'll be reading it on ebook because it is free through Project Gutenberg, and I'll let you know my thoughts when I'm finished. This morning I read The Weirdest World. It is a delightfully weird short story about an alien who is referred to as a blob when it is marooned on Earth, specifically in Florida, which I thought was pretty clever of the author, considering you hear some strange stories coming out of the state of Florida. Anyhow, the story is told from the point of view of the blob and its adventures living among the people who are referred to as grubs. This was an entertaining and quirky science fiction story. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and I really want to check out some more stories by R.A. Lafferty. So what's next on my Week of Weird TBR? Well, it's to fulfill the read a manga or graphic novel prompt, and I have chosen to read a manga. I really am glad that Jason and Crystal picked this prompt because it allows me to incorporate more manga in my reading life. So I asked my son Andrew for a weird recommendation, and he gave me a manga by Yukinobu Tatsu called Dan to Dan. And it is the first in the series, obviously, since I'm just starting it. But he did tell me that it is a little spicy and it is very, very weird. So let me tell you a little bit about it. Momo Ayase strikes up an unusual friendship with her school's UFO fanatic, whom she nicknames Okarun because he has a name that is not to be said aloud. While Momo believes in spirits, she thinks aliens are nothing but nonsense. Her new friend, meanwhile, thinks the exact opposite. To settle matters, the two set out to prove each other wrong. Momo to a UFO hotspot and Okarun to a haunted tunnel. What unfolds next is a beautiful story of young love and oddly horny aliens and spirits. So yeah, I think I'm gonna be a little bit out of my wheelhouse with this one, but I am gonna be open-minded because why not? You know, why not try something a little bit different? Anyway, I don't know exactly when I'm gonna be able to read it today because my dad is actually coming to spend the weekend with us, and I do have some house cleaning to do before he gets here. So I will check in with y'all later. Well, I hopped on Alex's sprints, Alex at Frank Fiction, and got started on Dan to Dan and made it through chapter 1. And oh my goodness, this is really, really weird. Yes, we have our two characters. As I mentioned, we have Momo and we have Akarun, who meet by chance. Momo is devastated because there's a guy that she likes who really is a jerk, and they break up, and she's kind of like down in the dumps and feeling sorry for herself. She comes across Akaran, who is being picked on. He's being bullied because he's considered a nerd, and so she kind of intervenes and talks to him so that the bullies leave him alone. They get to talking, and he's saying, I can't believe, you know, you believe in spirits. And she explains it's because her grandmother is a medium. She's like, what, aren't you the one that believes in UFOs? There's no such thing as aliens. And so they go back and forth about how they don't believe in what the other one believes. So they agree that they're going to prove to one another that spirits and aliens do exist. So Akaran says you need to go to this particular building and you're going to see some kind of alien UFO activity. And Momo tells him that he has to go to this haunted tunnel. So they go to the spots that they're supposed to be in, and Momo encounters these three weird looking dudes. They are trying to reproduce, even though they are like all males, and they clone one another, and something's happened very bizarre, and they think that maybe she might be the answer to this. So Andrew assured me that nothing terrible was going to happen to her, because I was like, I don't want to see anything that's going to be terrible. And it does not, thank goodness. But it's kind of sketchy there for a second. And then Akaran is at this tunnel. He comes in contact with Turbo Granny. And Turbo Granny kind of propositions him in a really terrible way, if you ask me. And the whole thing is shouldn't run, because when you run, if she outruns you, you get cursed. And so poor Akaran ends up getting cursed. So thankfully, the two of them end up out of their terrible situations. Momo now believes in aliens, and Akaran now believes in spirits. But the issue is Akaran is now cursed, and they've got to figure out how to solve this. So they're friends, but there is a twist, because when Akaran when Momo finds out what his real name is, it changes the way she feels about him. So I'm curious to see where this is going to go, but it is very, very weird. So Andrew was correct. I hope it's going to end up being a fun manga that maybe I'll want to continue the series, but it's too early to tell at this point. Good morning. I have finished Dan to Dan. I finished this morning, and I am pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed this manga. In fact, I'm going to continue with the series because I need to know what happens next, because of course it ended on a really good cliffhanger. I am enjoying the characters Momo and Akaran. We meet Momo's grandma, who is a hottie and a badass, and she is a medium, so she has psychic powers. We learn a little more about Momo's gift and how it needs to be developed. Momo and Akaran, they have to confront Turbo Granny, who is nasty. She's just gross, and she's relentless, and she doesn't play fair. But they had an unexpected situation occur when they did confront Turbo Granny, and that's what I need to find out in the next issue. But yeah, I'm really surprised with how much I enjoyed it. I mean, Andrew knew it would be fun. It is humorous in many parts. The only thing I will say is it does have explicit content, and it even says that on the manga. So be aware of that if you decide that you might want to try to read it. I was okay with it because it was there. It's for adults to read, but it doesn't cross the line into territory that I would have thought would have been concerning. So, like I said, unless it gets to be worse than what I read in this manga, I'll continue with the series. But yeah, it was a fun time. I'm giving it 5 stars, and I can't wait to, read more of Dan to Dan. Today is the last day of Week of Weird, and it also happens to be Stephen King's 77th birthday. So in celebration of my favorite author's birthday, I am going to read a story for the Cosmic Horror Prompt. Now, I have 2 stories picked out, so I'm not sure which one I'm going to read yet. I might end up reading both of them. We'll see. My hubby and my dad and I are going to the Friends of the Library store today, and then we're going to go eat at my friend's Italian restaurant. So I might be able to read one of the stories on the way to the store and maybe read one on the way home from the restaurant. I don't know. We're just going to see. The first one is called The Jaunt, and this is from my Skeleton Crew collection. And it follows a family awaiting their journey through the Jaunt, a technology that enables teleportation, as they head off on a 2-year business trip to Mars. And then the second one is from my Night Shift collection, and it is called I Am the Doorway. After being exposed to an alien mutagen on a space flight to Venus, a disabled former astronaut narrates his frightening experience. So they both sound good to me. Not sure which one I'm going to choose. Again, I could possibly choose both. Why not? It's Stephen King's birthday, and very excited to end Week of Weird reading something by my favorite author. to the Friends of the Library store, and I am specifically looking for a book called The Doctor's Wife by Mary Elizabeth Braddon for Victober. It's the group read. I'm also looking for a copy of Scritch Scratch. It's a middle grade book that I like to read with Kaelin for Halloween. And I'm also looking for some Gunsmoke Westerns because Westerns are buy one, get one free, I believe. So anyway, wish me luck. I'm back and I want to share my adventures that I had today, as well as my thoughts on both of the short stories that I read by Stephen King. And I was semi-successful at the Friends of the Library store. As you know, I was looking for specific books. Unfortunately, I did not find The Doctor's Wife for Victober or Scritch Scratch for Halloween. However, I did find a hardcover copy of the very first book I ever read by Clive Barker back in college, and that is Weave World. I'm very, very excited to get my hands on a hardcover copy. It's a chunker. Look how great that cover is, and I only paid $2, and it's in pretty good condition. And then they had the Gunsmoke Westerns on sale, buy one, get one free, and I got 6 books. I'm so excited for $3. So I've spent a total of $5 today at the Friends of the Library store and got 7 books. So I just want to share the titles that I got and show you the covers. I got Tough Company by Clem Colt. This one looks like we're going to have a little bit of romance on the range. And then White Wolf's Outlaw Legion by Hal Dunning. And then Blood on the Range by Eli Coulter. Rogue River Cowboy by Lauren Payne. The Owl Hoot Trail by Bennett Foster. I love some of these titles. They're great. And then last but not least, Lone Star Cowboy by Leslie Scott. So not too bad of a haul for my, little adventure to the Friends of the Library store. Our next stop after the Friends of the Library store was Gallodoro's Taste of Italy. It is an Italian restaurant that is owned by my childhood friend Danny and his wife Chantel. I have known Danny, I think, since kindergarten. We went to the same grammar school, St. Matthew's in River Ridge. And then we even took an anthropology class in college at UNO. It was called Fads and Fallacies, and it was all about Bigfoot and all these urban legends. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, I have not seen Danny in years. Now, keep up with him and what's going on with his restaurant that opened up in June and his farm and just whatever he gets up to. So, but it's very different when you can see someone in person. So it's nice getting to talk to him, but the food is amazing. We had fried artichoke, and that's the first time I ever had fried artichoke. It was so yummy. And then I ordered a meatball po' boy. I only ate half and I brought the other half home to my son Barry because I was making room for mango gelato. My dad got coconut gelato and my husband got the spumante. But we loved everything that we ate today, and we are definitely going back because they do make stuffed artichoke as well as cannolis, and they weren't there today. So that means we need to be able to go back and get some when, they make it the next time. So very, very excited about being able to visit again, and just a wonderful little place. There's also jelly that they make, and I got some peach jelly. We're going to use that to pour over some cream cheese and, eat that with some crackers. So very excited to finally be able to go visit their restaurant and have some wonderful food, because we did leave there with some happy tummies. Well, I decided to read both stories because I could not make a decision about which one I was going to read. So I said, let me just read both of them. And I'm glad I did because I enjoyed both of them. So our first story, I Am the Doorway, is about Artie. He is telling his friend Richard about his experience in space because there has been an accident and he becomes disabled, but he is not only disabled to where he can't walk any longer and he's confined to a wheelchair, but he's also disabled in another way. And that's because when he and his partner Corey were in space, on their mission to Venus, somehow he was exposed to an alien mutagen. And he doesn't discover that he's been exposed to this for quite a few years being back on Earth. But anyway, he's telling his story about what has happened to him and where he thinks he might have come in contact with this alien mutagen. So I think it's creepy just because anything in outer space is creepy to me. I think it's vast. You're vulnerable. I mean, you have seen Alien, right? If something is out there that is not of our world, how are you going to defend yourself? How are you going to deal with it? So there is a part in the book I want to share with you, or in this short story. It just kind of made me think, if he's feeling this way and he's an astronaut and he's been trained, to go on these missions, and it wasn't like this was the first time he had ever been out in space, then I don't know, it would make me feel uneasy. I was uneasy reading about his experience. So I think Stephen King did a good job of having Artie explain it, to Richard. So they're, orbiting around the planet, and they've gone around like 4 times, and they've taken their pictures and video. And he says the whole planet looks like the Grand Canyon in a wind tunnel. Corey estimated wind speed at about 600 miles per hour near the surface. Our probe beeped all the way down and then went out with a squawk. We saw no vegetation and no sign of life. Spectroscope indicated only traces of the valuable minerals, and that was Venus. Nothing but nothing, except it scared me. It was like circling a haunted house in the middle of deep space. I know how unscientific that sounds, but I was scared gutless until we got out of there. I think if our rockets hadn't gone off, I would have cut my throat on the way down. It's not like the moon. The moon is desolate, but somehow antiseptic. That world we saw was utterly unlike anything that anyone has ever seen. Maybe it's a good thing that cloud cover is there. It was like a skull that's been picked clean. That's the closest I can get. So that imagery just seemed unsettling to me. Anyway, some things happen as a result of this alien invasion of Artie's body, basically, and how it makes itself known to him is really weird, and it is creepy. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was different. I liked the story within the story. I like the fact that the way it ends, we're not really sure what's going to actually happened to Artie, but we do kind of feel like he doesn't have control over his body, but he thinks he has control over his body and he's got a plan. But I ended up giving it 4 stars and, you know, was very excited about finally reading something else out of my Night Shift collection. So let me tell you about The Jaunt, which is the second story I read by Stephen King. This is also the last story that I'm reading for the week of Weird. It follows Mark Oates and his family. Mark has taken a job on Mars, which would last 2 years. And he and his wife Marilee decide that the whole family is going to go with him so that they don't have to be separated for the 2 years. So they're taking their 2 children, Ricky and Patty, along with them. This is not Mark's first experience with taking the jaunt. He has taken it like 25 times. It is a teleportation form of technology, form of travel. But his wife and his children have never been on the jaunt. And so they're a little bit nervous about it. So they enter the sleep lounge and they're waiting for their instructions and for the attendants to come because they have to be put to sleep in order to go through the travel. He senses that his wife's nervous and his children, Patty more so than Ricky. Ricky just seems a little more interested. So Mark decides that he is going to tell a story about the history of the jaunt. The kids kind of know from learning a little bit about it in school, but he's going to give them a little bit more history about the inventor, who is Victor Caroon. And he pretty much tells the children about how he started off with using inanimate objects and then he tested with mice. Once the mice are brought into the story, Patty is constantly asking him, what happened to the mice? What happened to the mice? Because Mark kind of skirts around that question. And it's because he doesn't want to tell his children that the mice, some of them die in the process of these experiments that the inventor is doing. And he doesn't want the children to be scared about that because they're about to go through teleportation. So anyway, he is pretty much telling them a vanilla version of the story because the whole point of why he's doing it is to make them feel at ease, not to scare them. So, you know, it's getting closer and closer and closer for them to be put to sleep and to make their journey. And boy, oh boy, I mean, we learn some things that Mark, you know, is thinking in his mind about some things that have come up once the government took over, you know, Victor's work, because he was doing this research kind of like privately. And then when he made a breakthrough, it's sort of like the government got interested because he needed more funding and then they took over. And so then it was kind of used. There were probably some ethical issues, I would say, you know, and how they tested the jaunt early on. But it's getting closer, and Patty keeps asking, Dad, what happened to the mice? I need to know what happened to the mice. And he kind of just doesn't really answer it in the way he should have. And there are consequences because of that. And also because he fails to fill in some of the details. And I would never want to take the jaunt myself personally after reading the story. I mean, I think it's all fantastic that we can have technology and it can do wonderful things like that. But I'm adventurous to a point. I don't think I would ever do it. It is creepy. It's eerie. I was really surprised by, you know, how it unfolds and how it ends. It was a 5-star read for me, and I would recommend it. If you haven't read any of Stephen King's short stories, I would recommend this one, just because, especially if you like weird stories, it was perfect for Week of Weird. Well, friends, as you can see, I enjoyed another round of Week of Weird. Many thanks to Crystal at Fiber Artsy and Jason at Jason's Weird Reads for hosting this terrific week-long readathon. What about you? Did you participate in Week of Weird? If so, what did you read? Let me know in the comments below. I'm always looking for new weird stories. As always, thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate you watching. And until our paths cross again, stay amazing and be adventurous.